but generally speaking, we all benefit so much by treating all human life as equivalent and sacred, that it just seems silly to try to parse it more. But it is true that my view entails the claim that anyone who's smarter than me, who's happier than me, who's capable of much greater, much richer and deeper experience, who's going to help the world in ways I could never dream of, that person is more important than me. I don't have any hesitation or problem admitting that. It's just any way you look at it, that seems to me to be a fact. And yet, I think we are all better off living in a world in which we basically ignore that fact, and because of the virtue of fairness and justice and being blind to those details in how we write laws and create institutions and how we're motivated to help people. Had many questions about the authority of science. This is a consolidation of several of them. How can we be confident in our knowledge of the world, and whether it's reason generally or science specifically? Because we've naturally evolved. We haven't evolved to understand the world perfectly. We've just evolved to spawn and survive. So how can we be confident that we are actually producing an understanding that is in any sense valid? And when looking at the history of scientific progress and how we get these huge changes in scientific theory, how can we be confident that science itself is a story of moving closer and closer to the truth? This is a point that the philosopher Thomas Kuhn came up with, or made in his famous book, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, it's probably 50 years ago. The character of change in scientific theory is not one of these incremental changes which seem to be converging on reality as it is, but you have some rather wholesale changes as going from Newton's theory to Einstein's. The theories look nothing like one another, and from a Kuhnian point of view, that raises the doubt that maybe we're not converging on the truth in any deep sense. I think one thing to notice is this is really only true at the frontiers of science. It's not true to say that we don't conquer ground in science, which then is no longer vulnerable to this theoretical churn. We do conquer ground, and there are huge regions of our scientific understanding of the world which are not up for grabs and which no one is having to rethink in terms of their most basic shape. So you take something like DNA in biology. Now there's obviously molecular biology is a hugely fertile field of present research and inquiry, but no one's going to wake up tomorrow morning and discover that DNA has nothing to do with inheritance, that we've just been completely misled on that front. That would be, there's so much attesting to the role that DNA plays in the mechanism that allows for inheritance, that yes, there are wrinkles that we are constantly finding, like epigenetics, for instance, but this is ground that is conquered, and we're not going to see wholesale changes in our understanding of the world there. And this is progress of a sort that you only really have in science. You don't have this. You certainly don't have this in religion. You don't have it in elsewhere, for the most part, in human creativity. You don't have it in art or literature. We can't say that, well, novels are getting better generation after generation, or art is getting better. There's a dialogue. There are influences, but there clearly in science is this justified sense that we are getting a more accurate and compelling picture of the way the world is, and that it is iterative, and it is a matter of progress. And this progress extends to our understanding of ourselves, extends to the understanding of the human mind and what's possible for us as subjective creatures. So I think it's not our reliance on authority in science, the fact that we talk in terms of what the authorities in any one field believe to be true about the nature of the universe, is not the same thing as a reliance on the authorities of religion. It's to reference the mainstream opinion in chemistry is not the same move. It's not the same abject reliance on authority as it is to reference the mainstream opinion in Protestant theology. It's just because Protestant theological discourse is not constrained by the insults of reality in every moment. It's not constrained by experiment and the mutual self-criticism of people who are competing to get their grants funded. It's not to say that scientific discourse is perfect in the way it purifies itself of self-deception and fraud and other ways in which we can fail to understand the truth, but it is so much better than any other game in town that every other game suffers by comparison, and that's something we just have to admit and I think celebrate in as public a way as possible. Got a few questions from Norway in response, obviously, to the recent terrorist atrocity there. The first is, one reader writes, unfortunately this has led to the political left to delegitimize and demonize criticism of Islam even more than before. Obviously, whatever problem we had with the integration of Muslims before the terror attacks is still there. It is, however, impossible not to reconsider one's rhetoric even when one's intentions are purely benevolent. So the question is, do you have any suggestions about how to approach this? Now, this is a problem which I blogged about a little bit already. This is a real concern for me. There was already such a politically correct impediment, especially in Europe, but everywhere, in the way of speaking honestly about specific doctrines within Islam and the way in which they are actually held by Muslims in various communities. And it's decidedly inconvenient that the people who feel no constraint in terms of political correctness are, and therefore do say rather voluble and often perfectly accurate things about Islam, are racists and fascists and anti-Semites and people you absolutely you wouldn't want to touch with a 10-foot pole, but for the fact that they're the only people, for the most part, in the public square, loudly saying what has to be said. And so this, obviously this just mind-boggling massacre that occurred in Oslo has made it even more difficult to speak honestly about the nature of Islam, because you, in doing so, seem to align yourself, or at least to be very callous to the company you're traveling in. I think we just have to blow past that. We have to talk about we can't talk about religion as a monolith. We have to talk about the differences among religions. And within any one religion, we have to talk about the uniquely bad and consequential ideas. And for my money, there is no set of notions worse or more damaging or more divisive or more imperiling of the future than the beliefs in martyrdom and jihad in the Muslim world, in the doctrine, which really are central to the doctrine of Islam. This is not the crazy Islam that no Muslims know about or care about. This is not the equivalent of some cult within Islam that can be written off as not influential or representative of a major tradition. This is not the Branch Davidians, David Koresh in Waco, Texas, getting ready to self-immolate and not really representing Christianity. This is just one of the central messages of Islam, that paradise awaits those who die in defense of the faith. Nothing better can happen to you, and it is incumbent upon all Muslim men to wage jihad. And there are many others. This idea is set within a larger context of Muslim expectation for world domination, which is not a fantasy that right-wing racists make up. It is something that Salafi Muslims, for the most part, by and large, talk about ad nauseum. And this is what has to happen is the Muslim world has to find some way to really marginalize these voices. And it will be very difficult because these are not crazy interpretations of the faith. These are rather straightforward instances of theology. And so it's like trying to figure out how to get the Christians to stop thinking Jesus is the Son of God. It would be hard. Now, there are Christians who have stopped thinking that, and there are Christians who don't invest anything in some of the central notions of Christianity. It took centuries to make that possible in the West, and I don't think we have centuries to wait around for the Islam to get its act together on the world stage. So we can't lie about the nature of Islam, and given the fact that very few people on the left realize this or want to talk about this publicly, you find yourself echoing the words of reactionaries and worse, and that's it's a huge problem discursively, and the only answer is to keep disavowing all of the racism and all of the other craziness, and make it clear at every moment that you're talking about ideas, you're talking about Islam, you're not talking about people and the color of people's skin, certainly, and you're not talking about specific cultures, you're talking about ideas and their consequences. So the white convert to Islam is who you're talking about just as much as the Arab who was born into the faith. And within that frame, you are talking about specific ideas, not just a nominal attachment to the faith.